You are a 46-year-old male. You've been married for 21 long years. You have two children. Your wife is having an affair. You need to split your marital home and all of your other finances, and your wife is not currently working. What do? You need a divorce. But my goodness, this seems complicated, maybe a little frightening. What do you have to give up? What is it that you have as a risk and an exposure? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a real question from a hypothetical, in quotation marks, person. What I want to know is, does a real person condition whether or not they get a divorce from a spouse cheating on them? Do they condition that divorce on whether or not they have to divide their finances? Is that for real? Would somebody really decide not to divorce a cheating person who may even potentially become pregnant from another man's child in the context of a marriage because they don't want to give up 50% of their 401k? Well, here's a little profanity perhaps. Who the hell would want to give up 50% of their 401k? Who would want their non working, this could be male or woman, male or female, who would want their non working spouse to have half of everything that has been earned during the marriage? And you might have to pay the lion's share of the debts because the other party has very little, maybe. Would you really want to have to pay that person half of everything you've accrued over 21 long, agonizing years of marriage? And in return, what are you receiving? Your freedom, maybe. But if you had $200,000 in a 401k and all of it accrued during the marriage, maybe then your spouse takes $100,000, all for the privilege of having been married to you, working infrequently. Again, this could be guy or gal, working infrequently, contributing very little. Maybe they weren't even the best parents. And maybe your romantic life together was always very lacking, with the exception of having had a couple of kids together who are now, one is 17 and one is 19. And the situation maybe becomes less complicated from that perspective because now we don't have that person needing a parenting plan. If your 17-year-old is about to graduate high school and turn 18, no parenting plan necessary, most likely. Your 19-year-old certainly doesn't need a parenting plan unless they are going to be on lifetime child support due to disability or some other infirmity that nobody could have predicted or ever wanted. So now we have this circumstance. And the circumstance is, you don't need a parenting plan and you can move on with your life. You're young enough that you can still have potentially 20-ish years of a career to rebuild your finances, move on, find love again. Your kids are old enough that you don't have anything tying you down to the marriage except for bitterness, enmity, which is a fancy way of saying hatred. Let's be real here. You just don't want your spouse to take half because they've given you nothing. You've given them your all, they've given you nothing. What in the world entitles them to half? Florida law, Florida statutory law, Florida case law. Now, you could stubbornly someday drag out a case and take a case to trial because you want the judge to freaking tell you exactly what has to be given up, even if you could have settled your case early on 50-50. And that, of course, is to the extent that the other party's even willing to settle. God only knows. They could be just as stubborn. They could have their feet dug in. They could be as obnoxious as can be. And they could have unrealistic, wild expectations about what they deserve and what they're entitled to. And in a lot of cases, that's fueled and egged on by an unscrupulous counsel on the other side. You're going to get shoved to your 80%. We're going to kick their ass in court. We're going to get you everything you want. Okay, whatever. So settlement isn't even always possible. But let's not go ahead and spend tens of thousands of dollars fighting the inevitable just so a random stranger who was either appointed to the bench or elected to the bench can tell you exactly what has to happen. We don't need the principal. We don't need the punisher in the background. Listen to your lawyer if they're honest with you and they tell you how the case is likely to play out. Maybe there's a little wiggle room in one way or another for purposes of settlement. But let's go ahead and find a reasonable way to conclude your divorce. There doesn't have to be a proverbial, metaphorical, aerial fist fight. This thing can be dealt with in a manner which is in your best interest. Now, losing half, a cheating spouse, having what you thought might have been retirement together and early retirement with your finances, that's all kiboshed and canceled. Well, guess what? Now you're going to be a 46-year-old person earning a good salary because you have career experience. Your kids are growing up, so you have no responsibilities at home. You have all the free time you want. There's nobody to bother you. There's now not going to be anything tying you down. You're not going to have to worry about your spouse's fidelity anymore. You're not going to have to worry about arguments and their behavior anymore. You just go ahead and move on with your life. And a lot of people have said the following: it was worth every penny just getting rid of that person. Okay. Not having to be tied down to them and living in the same house with hostility and threats and never ending drama. That is almost priceless.